Okay, welcome everyone to the next episode of Twitch TV / Red Green Junior TV. We have today a very special guest, the one and only production manager for all 15 seasons of the Red Green Show, the one and only Miss Sandi Richardson. Sandi, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Well, I am absolutely thrilled, and I am so excited to think I can reminisce about the good old days. And they were good old days.
Weren't they?
I used to always joke and say I'm probably the only person in the world that goes to work and actually laughs. And it's true. I mean, there was a lot of pressure, but it was a lot of fun, too, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a picture up on my computer, Sandi, it's the kind of last cast and crew picture at the CBC studios, I guess.
Okay.
And it's, the cast and crew kind of waving goodbye to the camera. And, my dad is sort of front and center with Pat, Harold right beside him. And then in between them and a bit above them, which I think is appropriate, there you are waving as well. And I thought, not everybody who watched the show might know your name or whatever, but people who came to tapings certainly met you. But in terms of importance to the show, I've had my dad on the stream, I've had Pat on the stream, and you're the third person that I've had on the stream because that's, you're a core person to every season of Red Green and what it was and what it built. And so it's a pleasure to have you on.
Well, thank you. And, over the 15 seasons, it was a pleasure. I mean, yes, there was a lot of sleepless nights and nail biting and, thinking, how are we going to make this work? But all in all, when I look back, and I think number one, the pleasure that it gave our viewing audience, and the fact that, we've been out of production since 2005, and Red Green is still going strong. And people still talk about him, and, you're selling out shows for him to go see, and, it really did touch a lot of hearts, and I think that was the backbone for everybody on that show that worked so hard. We knew we were onto something, and we were touching people's lives, and that was important.
Absolutely. Now, obviously, our family and your family and the connection happened before Red Green and kind of was deeper than that, was a friendship level first before it was sort of professional on the show. So I thought if we're going to kind of start off the interview, it's probably good to start off kind of at the beginning. And if we can remember that far back.
Oh, I can. And it's just, it's a very funny story. And people look at me like, oh, my God, But I actually had a magazine article. And the girl had to, I think she questioned me as the fact, is this really true? But the story basically is that, okay, I'll just kind of go back a bit.
Okay.
So, I was a school teacher at one time, and I was involved with theater. And when I started having to get up early and work with kids all day, I couldn't do theater for fun in evenings. Rehearsals were too late, everything. So I got involved with doing makeup. So then I could only just go out and do makeup for productions, and I really enjoyed that. So I could teach school during the day and occasionally on weekends do makeup for theater productions. So given that, once I got pregnant with my daughter, Tiffany, and,
who's beside you in this picture, by the way.
Oh, there you
go.
I kind of, did the soul searching, and I thought, I can't work with kids all day and come home to kids of my own. And so that was kind of there. I kind of felt that maybe that was my swan song at that point, but I had no idea what I was going to be doing. So anyways, it turns out that, lo and behold, I give birth to Tiffany in the hospital, and my wonderful roommate in the room happens to be Morag Smith, who just delivered her firstborn baby, who was Max. And at the time, her husband Steve was like managing bands, and he was like flying in and out of the room and whatever, and my husband would bring us both coffees and Tim Hortons donuts of all healthy foods. And so he kind of got into the threesome and then the babies, and so those days we were allowed to stay in the hospital 3 to 4 days. I mean, it was brilliant. So we did some real bonding, your mom and I, and then we sort of made a pact, and we said, brand new moms, new babies, like give ourselves, 5-6 weeks, and we'll get together for lunch. And I thought, oh, that's so nice.
See how it's going.
So your mom called me, and she said, so are you ready to come out with this new baby? And it's like, oh, sure. no problem. So I went, and your mom and dad were living in Hamilton in a little house, and it was just fun. I went in, and of course, I'm like biting at the bit because on the dining table is an astronaut's helmet. And I'm thinking, oh, this is not a normal thing to have on somebody's dining table. I had no idea that they had just done, their pilot for Smith & Smith
Okay.
and all of that. Yeah. So this had to do with having a prop. So lo and behold, we go forward a bit, and the husband's got an opportunity to meet, and Steve and my husband, Pat, kind of hit it off, and then before we knew it, we were all camping at the Leacock Festival while your mom and dad were performing, and we were back at the campsite with the babies, and, that kind of stuff. And then we had a fire, or a conversation around a fire one night, and your dad said to me, so what do you see yourself doing for the rest of your life? I was like, whoa, there's a shot of hot water. So I guess I really flippantly answered him and said, I want to work in an office filled with men. And he laughed, like, what? I said, well, my whole life I've worked with children, and, and I've worked with moms, and because I worked in a dance studio and took dancing lessons, so my whole world was kids and all that sort of thing. So my answer was I want to work in an office filled with men. So 2 days later, your dad comes barreling down the car, dust flying at this campsite, jumps out of the car, and he said, I've got a job for you. And it's like, what? And he said, well, their makeup artist on Smith & Smith was no longer able to continue the job for health reasons. Would I like to do it? Oh, of course. Yeah, sure. But I knew nothing about television makeup, okay? So I took every crash course and talked to everybody I knew. I knew theatrical makeup, and that was the beginning of me working with your mom and dad.
Wow.
I met them in the hospital, started out as a makeup artist, and when I finished working with Red Green, your dad would start a sentence and I would finish it. So we had a really good working rapport.
Yeah.
And, I guess we were comfortable with each other, and he was confident with me, and, there was always this feeling of never to let him down, and that was kind of the whole crew feeling, too. Everybody gave that 99%, whether it was moving something or doing something that may not have been part of a job description, but it was that feel of, we're onto something really good, and we're just one big happy family. And that's how it started, and I feel the same way now.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Actually, I don't think a lot of people who work together in TV or whatever have that kind of bond first. You know what I mean? So I think those kinds of relationships, I think that's part of what the audience picks up on when they watch. That these relationships were genuine among these people.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. And since working on Red Green, I've done a million things, but they're quick, and you come and you go in and you do it and it's over, and there's not, we had a real family thing happening, and we had people that we worked with that, started with us at the beginning that did almost all 15 seasons or close to it, so that's something in itself.
Yeah, watching the episodes, one thing on the stream we can do, we kind of go through the seasons sort of week to week, and I've had a number of viewers comment how many of the names in the credits are the same season 2, season 7, season 10, the same person's doing audio, or the same person's editing, or the same person, whatever. And it's pretty cool, the longevity that we were able to have with many people.
It was wonderful.
Yeah.
It absolutely was wonderful. And I think your dad was a very easy person to work with. I have to laugh. He demanded excellence in his own way, but we all knew that. And so we were always kind of like that one step behind him or running alongside of him to make whatever it was he was thinking work. You know? And some of it was pretty hokey.
When people watch the credits of our show, they might see director or producer or, camera operator or something and have a sense of what that person does. Your job title as production manager probably could be summed up as make the things work. But I was wondering, maybe you could talk a little bit about, for those of us who don't know, what that job kind of meant on the Red Green set.
Okay, well, it really grew. When we first started out in season 1, we used to shoot at a local farm in Upper Stony Creek, and there was 5 of us, including your dad. And we used the farmhouse for doing makeup and any costume change. And usually, if it wasn't raining, we like eat lunch sitting outside on a picnic table.
Right.
And I would make the lunches the night before. So I would do the makeup, find the location, the costumes, make lunches, and we would go out and shoot for our 8-hour day. And, you know, our day at that time was only 8 hours because we also had to include for those people that were working with us travel time. So all said and done, 6 hours. So it started out that, you know, I was making lunches, doing locations, all that. And then it grew as we got more complicated and we started growing. I guess summing it up, you know, I would do all the contracts for the cast members. It was the production meetings that we would have as to what was needed. So it would, you know, lining up and making sure we had cast members for the day of shooting, finding the locations, working out a fee for them, finding wardrobe, finding the props. And then on location, I did all the makeup. So
wow.
It was sort of everything. But, you know, when I say it now, it's like, oh, my God, I actually don't know how I did it.
That's ridiculous, yeah.
You did what you had to do. And we wanted to make it work, so we just did. And once we had our crew organized, I would work at the time. It was with CH, and I would give them our shoot days and who we needed. And, of course, we wanted the same people all the time. And so, you know, we'd line up our shoot days, get our cast and crew ready, and away we would go. And, you know, I mean, at the beginning, bare bones, I mean, even going back looking at season 1 and 2 is basically, you know, Harold and Red.
Right.
Maybe a guest, you know. And then as we grew, it was like, oh, then there's more people and more locations, and Handyman Corners got more complicated.
Yeah.
And so, you know, so it was a growing thing, but basic roots. I mean, I wore many hats, and I continue to do it, but on a different scale.
Right.
You know, so.
Yeah, I was just trying to think. I mean, when the show started, you know, I'm 12, 13 years old. So I would be there sometimes, but I wasn't really working on it. By the time I was a teenager and more working on set, you were sort of almost like the leader of a crew of people at that point.
I was.
Yeah, as opposed to you had to just do everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that was the growth because we brought in more people.
Yeah.
Like instead of having just one cameraman when we'd be in studio, we would have 3 with a backup of 4. And so, yeah, so it was a matter of production managing all of those people as to where, what, and when, you know, and getting them into tune. And I really felt that, you know, basically I would give scripts out to pretty much everybody that was involved with the show so that they would come in knowing that this is what we were about to do. So,
right.
You know, if it was something giggly, get the giggles out, but here's what we're going to do, and everybody has to be creative because time was a huge factor for us, right?
Yeah.
We tried not to do any overtimes, and, you know, so, I mean, it was really just staying on top of all of that, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it was good because I think people would respect the position I was in and would make my job that much easier.
Right. Yeah, you said, you know, saying to my dad back in the day, you'd worked with all these kids. Now you wanted to work with men. I'm just wondering, working on the Red Green show, which was a lot of men, obviously, like a lot of male cast members, a lot of male crew members. How much did working with kids prepare you for that set? We had both young and immature people out there, so.
Okay, well, I had to take child psychology because I took my teaching certificate from Mohawk College in ECE at the time.
Okay.
And then branched off. And but anyways, I took child psychology, and I used to giggle to myself because I would think a lot of men are still little children in many ways.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I could use a lot of that child psychology on full-grown men. You know, the praise, the reward, you look great, that's wonderful, let's be happy, oh, here's a snack. So, you know, it kind of all went hand in hand. And it was, you know, my way of maybe my own stress relief. But honestly, the child psychology, working with as many men on crew, both in front and behind camera, I think really, truly paid off.
Yeah, you know? I could totally tell looking back now. Absolutely. You had all the tricks in the bag for sure.
Well, this is it, you know, whatever would make people happy, you would just kind of like, wow, well, let's do this. And the praise and reward system, and, you know, and I was a big person for that. You know? So. kids. That's part of my training. What can I say? Not television training. That was back in the day for child psychology.
Yeah, who knew? You were getting prepared.
Well, I guess, the office filled with men. What can I say?
Now you talked about one of your roles, and we'll get back to this a bit later with our more rapid fire questions on the prop stuff. But just, I guess, maybe a bit more generally, you talked about one of the roles of your roles as production manager was to find locations, but also to like procure these props that we would need. You know, the creative, the writing team would come up with these scripts, and then that would sort of get passed to you to, you know, make it so. Yeah. And so now you're stuck with, I got to find all this crap and find a way to make it work. I'm just curious from you, you know, we've talked on stream about, you know, Mr. Used and some of the places that you went to. Just maybe talk a bit about some of the places that you got a lot of props from. Maybe were there any props that you found really difficult to get? You got a script one day and said, oh my gosh, how am I going to find a city bus or whatever? Talk a bit about that part of the job.
Okay, well, I certainly did over the course of years, you know, beg and borrow from a lot of people. And that could be, you know, I'd go into somebody's house and see a bear skin or, you know, and then in the back of my head, it's like, whoa, I really need to have that bear skin. Well, all I can do is ask. And the funny thing is, I can do this so much for the show, you know, not be ashamed to ask anybody for anything because they can say no, and that's okay. I can't do it in my real life. Like if I go buy a car, I can't barter the price, but if it was red, green, I could, you know. So, you know, so I learned to do that. But then, you know, as the needs evolved, I certainly could never have done my job without Green Gables, Bruce Snyder from Green Gables, and also Len Waring from Mr. Used. And these people were the kind of people that if they didn't have, they knew somebody or they would put me in touch. And, you know, there's a lot of funny stories of me going to an auto wrecker and asking for a particular man, and this big burly guy says to me, who wants to know? And I'm shaking my boots. And it's like, well, I just wanted to ask, right? But so it was a matter of really developing all of that networking. Things from, you know, going to a monster truck show with, you know, my son when he was young and picking up business cards and chatting with people, and then down the road is like, oh, geez, like I really need a monster truck. Let's give it a try. And so even to this day, I mean, I certainly still drive my husband and my kids insane because I can be out, you know, in the car driving somewhere or at a flea market, and it's like, it's still in my head.
Right.
It's like, oh my God, this is a red green prop.
This would be perfect.
So perfect, right? And it's like, oh, I don't need that. So it was the networking that made it work. And, you know, when you say, you know, the hardest things, sometimes it's the simplest things that turn out to be the hardest. And, you know, I mean, obviously when we, you know, did the bus, you know, having to convince that we needed a bus and that we were going to wreck it. And also when we joined two identical cars together. Yeah. Those are the bigger and better things. I mean, we started off with putting a knife in a toaster, you know, and a glowing red light comes on. Right. You know, and then putting fire extinguishers on a go-kart to actually, you know, we've got a monster truck going into a pond and we're hoping it's actually going to float. So, I mean, you know, it just grew. And I think with your dad, for an instance, is that, well, if she got this, wait till she sees that, right? And it was always like, I would never want to say no. So you would just, by means, I mean, it was like, you know, for an example, when we went and worked in Muskokas for a while, well, there was no point finding an airplane down here in Mount Hope or in the marina when I needed it in the Muskokas. So, you know, so it was that kind of thing that you had to do. And it was, we were very fortunate one year, too, where we had to go to Yellowknife in search of snow for our Christmas special and had 3.5 hours worth of daylight. And then we're up there and you're thinking, like, well, where am I going to get this? And where am I going to get that? And, you know, it comes together because all people can do is say no. And I would definitely say for me, it was a matter of no matter who you talk to, Red Green had become a family name. And people wanted to be a part of that. So if they didn't have or couldn't help out, chances out of 10 they get back with, hey, I found somebody, maybe you can give them a try. So it was the networking and the wanting to be involved that really brought all that together, And I mean, even as far as places like Green Gables and Mr. Used and everything, I mean, what they charged us to get stuff was peanuts compared to what I'd be looking in a Toronto market,
Right. It helped being in Hamilton for that stuff, probably, yeah.
Absolutely, and I mean, I would love to get an honorable mention of a very funny story with Len. Is that, and this was before when we were very low budget. I didn't have a design department. I didn't have people making props unless I did.
Right.
And I was in search of.
After you made lunch, you had to make the props. Yeah.
I was in search of speakers from drive-in theaters, and all I needed was one. But I didn't have time to make it. There wasn't that. So I had called Len and I said, Len, this is what I need. Any chances? And he'd always, if there was a flicker of hope, he'd say to me, well, when do you need it by? And it would be like, oh, yes, he's going to help me, right? And so I told him, 3 days, 4 days, and he called me back within like 24 hours, and he said, so how many did you say you wanted? And I said, well, I just really need one. He said, okay, we'll come down and pick it up. So away I go, and I'd be driving the Possum van in those days, go down, pick up the speaker, and found out that he had to buy 250 of them to get me one.
What?
That is a true story.
Wow.
He bought out a whole drive-in theater north somewhere, and so that I could get my one. So that's the kind of cooperation I had. I mean, he was a darling. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's a true story. So that's one of my favorite stories. So, anytime you see a drive-in speaker at a drive-in, think of that story.
I've never heard that one. That's a good one. I like that. Yeah, that's amazing. Cool. One of the things people often ask, like, especially in the earlier seasons, we have so many K cars, and even later seasons too. So many cars coming through the set, and a lot of fans ask me, where did you guys get all the K cars from? Where did you get all these junkers that you got to destroy in the handyman corners? And obviously, I remember the Terry's Garage connection, which obviously sort of happened over time. But I you can correct me if I'm wrong here, Sandi, but I feel like at least I remember one time coming on set, and there was a car there that day that someone had like given to the show. Like sometimes we would get a fan who wanted to have their show, have their car be destroyed on Handyman Corner. Am I dreaming, or was that right?
No. And this is absolutely true. We did a thing where we needed a car. We were doing go-karts, and we were in Upper Stony Creek on a hilly road, and we needed to have a car that would get some air, which means obviously as much of that engine and everything can be taken out, because we didn't have like a huge hill.
Right.
And we had a fellow who had, over the course of a few months kept, sending me like, I've got this car and that car, and he showed up and donated the car, and it was a little red K car, and served the point. And the only payment I gave him was a copy of that segment, and he was so happy. Yeah, so, for sure. And it was his car, and he was allowed to, come and stand on the sidelines. And I would say, this guy was maybe late 30s, early 40s. So, but just for the love of, oh my God, it's my wreck, and they're using it, and just the thrill. So.
Oh my goodness.
But that goes along, too, because the bear that was in the set of the Red Green Show, that was donated to us by a fan. And that was somebody who first they loaned it and rented to us, and then the husband passed, and she said, congratulations, you've just inherited this. It was written in the man's will.
Wow.
That it would now live forever with the Red Green Show. So, so those are things that touch people's hearts. They just wanted to be a part of it. So, like I say, if I would just find the right people to ask, I usually would get the right answer of sure.
Right.
So,
that's very cool. Now, I remember also early on, I don't recall the year, but I feel like it was pretty early that some of you guys from the crew went down to the States, like LA or something. And sort of had an experience on, this is how sort of American sitcoms or TV does their stuff. Yeah. And you guys coming back with sort of a sense of, okay, this is how it, I don't know, should be done or can be done or is done at least down there. Remind me sort of when that was. Do you remember what show? Was it a few shows or one show that you saw? And what was that experience like?
Well, again, your dad talking to me, just feeling that we needed to do this because his heart was really with the crew of CHTV. He really felt a bond because obviously CHTV gave them their first start.
Right.
So he just really wanted to produce something that was going to make everybody really happy and really proud. And, keeping in mind too, your dad was a self-taught person. So when it came to whether technically or whatever, you learn as you go. And if you've got the mind for it, it's terrific. So what he wanted to do with the people from CH was come on board. Let's see what the U.S. is doing, that they're doing better than us, that they're producing better shows than us. What's their secret? What can we do? So anyways, I kind of rounded that all up by, I'm going to say it was probably 3-4 months worth of work, just getting contacts. We did like the Arsenio Hall show, Family Ties, the Golden Girls. I mean, I'm talking a few years ago. And, just hit a note that, again, people were like, oh, everybody loves to be able to talk about themselves and show them, right?
Right.
So everybody was, would be delighted to have you.
There's that child psychology again, Sandi. You're using it still. Good for you.
I know. And so I just went blind. I mean, who are we? A little Canadian production company and producing, we're not sure yet what it's going to be, but it's going to be something done really well. And so we got behind the scenes of, I think, and Perfect Strangers was another one of them. So they were all comedic shows, except for the Arsenio Hall show in its own way. But so then it was counterpart. So it would be like our lighting director would hook up with the lighting director of Golden Girls, and and then and so everybody teamed up that way. And there was I think there was 6 of us that went with your mom and dad, and we split up. Like we would get there, and I mean we were allowed to have our lunch with the cast and crew, and we would be there, and then at the
and you didn't have to make it this time, so that's good.
Yeah. I know. Which was really a treat. And, so then at the end of the day, your dad, being a dad to all of us, we would have to do an assignment. We had to write who we were with, what we saw, what we learned, more so what is different there than what is here. So we were down there for almost a week, and then came back, and again we had to submit full-blown essay style of what was the advantages, what did you learn, how can we apply this to our next endeavor.
Right.
So it was phenomenal because I think we all came back, of course, overwhelmed, meeting cast, crew, being on the set. But we came back, all of us, feeling like we can do that. Like they don't have anything. The only thing that was different was their budget. Like there's 5 of us on the first day of our red-green shoot where, there's like 52 people. And our joke was, there were 2 gentlemen, older gentlemen, their only job was polishing the Arsenio Hall floor, and nobody could walk on it. And we're thinking, oh my God, right? So we didn't go down there and came back with this wealth of information. We came back with a confidence of like, they're really not doing anything any different. We just have to find out with our budget how we can make it work. And I think that was the secret to off to the races, and we did it,
That's very cool. Now, speaking of budget, season 7, the show moves from kind of, CH and then kind of moving around, London and all this, a bit of tumultuousness after the early seasons. And all of a sudden there we are on CBC, and and the budget kind of goes up. And, if you watch the seasons kind of back to back, there's a noticeable bump in the level of, some of the actors that the show got, but also like the handyman, the scope of the handymans and the adventure films and things like that. I'm just curious, from your perspective, did you sense the job shift and change noticeably when it went to CBC?
I would say definitely. Yes, definitely. Besides the fact that we were all ecstatic and jumping up and down.
Right?
And going into this humongous studio with, what we thought was a huge set that wasn't as huge as we thought, But it was a very exciting time. So then, you know, like for an example, you'll probably find this really funny, is that when we first started Red Green, we took over the set from Comedy Mill, and
Right.
it was all brick and painted like blues and purples and whatever. And there was no budget to get this vacuform to be able to make it look like a real log Possum Lodge. So we had painters come in and paint the bricks to look like they were logs. And that's what we did.
Yeah.
So when we went to CBC, it was time for an upgrade that I was able to afford to actually get real log vacuform.
Yeah.
And so the set grew a little more because we had that growth and we had a bit more money for that. But I think, you know, like when I think about, you know, the influx of the extra cash, it wasn't like this big bundle of money dropped into your lap. It was just, now we could just kind of spread it out a bit more. We could get maybe a few more visiting actors. The set grew. But I think the fun part was location. Like instead of being at, you know, some farm and using their kitchen, you know, for lunches or whatever, we actually were able to rent a trailer that your dad drove.
Right.
And now we had a change room, we had facilities, we had a place we could meet. That was huge for us. That was a whole mental on location of, you know, an incredible, beautiful trailer that now we could take pride in. People could eat lunch and use a washroom and have meetings in, and your dad could sit in the back, not just hanging outside in whatever the weather was, waiting. And so
he hates that.
That was, yeah. And then, of course, you know, we could hire people to make lunches.
Yeah.
And then we also, I mean, in the beginning, we drove the Possum van. That was not only in the show, but we did that for all our pickup and delivery.
Right.
So then all of a sudden now we had trucks with the S&S logo on it, you know. It was like, wow, it was just exciting times in a bigger crew. And then I was, on my part, I think for me, a huge step forward was I was able to hire some real arts people that were actually making props for us, or, you know, jimmy rigging whatever needed to be done, and, you know, bringing in special effects people for, you know, an explosion or something. So all of that was the growth. And then with going into CBC, I think the biggest thing was there was never canned laughter for the Red Green, not ever. What people heard truly was what they heard from the fans. But I think going into CBC, it was the support that we got from the fan base that just made that growth and that influx bigger. Because like I say, every taping night, twice a week, we had 500 people come in.
Yeah.
That's saying something. It wasn't a busload of seniors coming from a senior center. These are true people in their plaid shirts.
Yeah.
And people of all ages, from kids and dads and grandparents and moms, and, you know, so that was the overwhelming. And I think that's when you saw in front of you things grew, but I think the confidence of the actors themselves grew because of the support they were getting.
Right. That live feedback was really special.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, when you have to have a security guard to get Red down to his car, I mean, doesn't get better than that.
Right.
You know, because the fans loved him.
Red has left the building.
Yes. Absolutely. And then, you know, I mean, people would come, and as I say, they would all dress, they would bring presents.
Oh.
My daughter did the warm-up out in the hallway waiting for the show, these people to come into a show, and they'd do giveaways and contests, and people would sing and make things, and it was a party.
Yeah, it was very interactive, you know, which was pretty cool. People didn't just come ready to sit on their hands and be entertained. They came to participate in something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, you know, just at this point, it might be a good time to mention one thing that sticks out in my mind and was very dear to my heart was, again, I was always looking and watching budgets. That's just when I started, you know, I never thought, you know, we can just blow this or try that. It was, no, every dollar counted. But we were doing our Christmas special at CBC, and I'm thinking, Christmas special, like, what are we going to do that makes it special without it being thousands of dollars for decorations or whatever? So I came up with the idea, as people were calling in to reserve tickets, they were told that they had to bring a Christmas decoration that they and their family could walk up and put it on set, and it would be there for a Christmas special. Like, no
genius.
Idea. I had no idea what we would get or if we would get anything. And Dave, I can say truthfully, I was overwhelmed. I think I had tears in my eyes to see families came in with duct tape Christmas trees and wreaths and bulbs and just so anybody that watches our Christmas special show, it even made the front of TV Guide back in the day. It was like, that was the fans that decorated the Christmas special. We had basics, like we took old pop cans, hoping people think they were beer cans, and we duct taped them, and hung them off the tree. But I mean, they did everything. I had some pretty hokey costumes for the cast members, but the set was to die for. It was just unbelievable.
That's amazing. Yeah, well, just talking about the fans, you talking about the Christmas special, I didn't even know that. That's awesome. I can recall being at those CBC tapings and, fans showing up duct taped together. They had to come up in the elevator together and just like crazy stuff like that, right?
Yeah,
so just wondering, you wonder if you had any other sort of fan stories. I know we talked a bit about that gentleman who made the walking sticks that was on all the sets, and I really felt like you always had a kind of a special connection with him, and maybe you want to talk about him a little bit as well.
I would love to talk about Michael. It's Michael Bowman, and I'm proud to say that. I guess I met Michael. We were taping in London, so that's a lot of years ago.
Yeah, that might have been season 3.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he was with his father. He's a special needs. Well, I call him a boy. He's a full-grown man now, but at the time, and he wanted to give Red a walking stick, and so I took it for him. And then I told him that we were going to be at the Sportsman show. And his dad said, "Oh, we would love to come." And I said, "Well, if you come to that, I will make sure that you get to meet Red." Because I think I got the walking stick after we finished taping. And by then, everybody's gone. So anyways, lo and behold, they showed up at the Sportsman show. And I kind of saw them in the crowd and came and I introduced them to Steve and blah, blah, blah. And again talked. And anyways, Michael, till this day, this many years later, I have never missed having a Christmas lunch with him, and we exchanged Christmas gifts. And he presented our whole cast every single show with walking stick, or every cast member with a walking stick. So everybody from Graham Greene to Gordon Pinsent. And his father was very supportive of him, and he did like Ducks Unlimited. And I mean, this he's been with the Prime Minister of Canada. I mean, it's just overwhelming what this young man has done with these walking sticks. So that, he came to a taping with his dad. We took him under our wing, and then, when he would come to tapings, I'd let her be the cranker at the meetings and this kind of stuff. And
I've seen him in some of the meetings. Yeah. And you can see those walking sticks kind of spread throughout the set, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I always made sure that there was one or two of them that would be on the set, too, as a little reward to him, because, he didn't have an easy life. He had wonderful parents that just were so supportive of him. And so I'm really proud to call him a friend, and we still get together.
That's very cool.
Yeah, it really is. But, we had a lot of fans that, even with the stand-up shows that Red does now, and I've been to a couple of them, and I'll be out standing in the lobby at intermission or something, and people are coming up to me like, Sandi, it's so good to see you. And somebody asked me for, my autograph, and it's like, oh my gosh. Like these are the same guys I recognize, that used to be at the Red Green taping.
Right.
So it never changed. It just, it's just ongoing.
That's very cool. Very cool. Yeah. Just, watching the credits of the show over the years, there's a lot of Smiths doing different jobs. There's a lot of Richardsons doing different jobs.
Yeah.
I still have this picture up with you and Tiff side by side. Just maybe talk a bit about that sort of family dynamic that we had on set with, your guys' kids kind of growing up on set in many ways as well.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I mean, my children were involved on set before even Red Green. I mean,
right.
My son worked on History Bites for a while. He was driving, cast members around for Go Girl.
Go Girl, yeah, that's right.
He was driving the van in to pick up all these cast members in Toronto and bring them here and that kind of thing. But Tiffany was really the one for the Red Green show because we were going to CBC. We're in Toronto again. here's us coming from small town, CHTV was our world, and it's like, then we go to London, and then it's like, now we're in the big city.
Yeah.
So Tiffany was just starting to go to Ryerson for journalism, and, just over dinner something, I told her how I was going to be interviewing, that I really want to have a warm-up person, and, we had sort of been taken under the wing of Air Force at the time, and, they had people, and, they taught me, kind of how you need ushers and blah, blah, blah. So then it was like, I got to find this person. So Tiffany said, well, I'd like to do that. And I was like, oh, right, da-da-da-da-da. So long story short, I interviewed 5 people, Tiffany being one of them, told them what the job was about, what I expected. I don't even remember if she got paid. I'm going to say it was maybe like $25 for the whole night.
Right.
I'm not even sure, but it wasn't that. It was the idea that it was giving her confidence to work with these masses and to organize them. And she was very comfortable with the microphone, and she created all kinds of little contests. And then, of course, she had the association with all these Ryerson students, that they became all of our ushers,
right.
And they were our store clerks and all that kind of thing. So, I said to her, I have to be prepared that if you don't do the job, I'm moving on and looking for somebody else. So I never had to do that.
Yeah.
And,
my dad said the same thing to me, so.
Yeah, she would have her team of people, and, they never let me down. And I think the best part was I think the reason they all loved coming was because they were poor university students, and they got to eat 2 really good dinners for the week.
That didn't hurt, right?
And if there was leftovers, they could take their styrofoam containers home, and they could eat for 4 days, right? And they just loved it, and they were all the same. They, nobody ever phoned in sick, nobody ever didn't show up, and they just got into it. And it was the fan base. They also loved doing that,
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
They would sell shirts. Well, we had a store in the lobby, and, they would just do everything. So, and it worked out really well. Absolutely. And then I hired Joan, my stepmom, and she insisted that we all call her Auntie Joan because she didn't want anybody to know her age or anything. And she did all the catering for all of our locations.
I remember,
and when we went to CBC, she used to do all the craft services. And when I approached Steve with, I thought she would be a great candidate, the very first thing he said to me was, if she doesn't work out, can you fire her? And I said, yeah.
Nice, Dad. Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, and she just loved it. And Joan now is going to be 83 on her next birthday.
Wow.
And she has her crew picture right beside her chair by her TV. And she lives the life every day.
That's very cool.
Best years of her life, yeah.
Yeah, no, she was great. I remember eating at those craft services tables during the studio shoots. And, it's just nice to have a friendly person, doing the food, and it's fantastic, right? What's not to like?
Yeah, well, this is it. So, it was interesting. But again, for me, it was a comfort zone as well. I knew that these people were wanting to do a good job, not just for themselves, but they had to prove it to me, too. And so it was a good working relationship, right? And I didn't have to fire any of them. It worked out very well.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Sandi, I'd like to finish off. First of all, thanks for hanging me for so long. I know, you're busy tonight packing and so on, so apologize that I'm taking all your time up. But I didn't want to let you go without asking some sort of quick fire questions about some of the props. I kind of said to the fan base on Twitch here, what are some items that you're curious kind of where we got that item from. And so some people have submitted some things. And so I thought I would just sort of ask you, if you can recall, I know it was a long time ago, but if you can kind of recall where you procured some of these things.
Sure.
So can we do that?
Okay. Hopefully I don't get stumped.
All right. The first one is, a lot of people love the experts portion of the show. And obviously, in the different seasons, it changed, the set upgraded over time. But I think the piece that most people think about when they think of the experts is the blue car couch where the headlights would light up for the I don't know part.
I know.
And I often get,
brilliant.
yeah, it was brilliant. And I often get asked from people, where the heck did you guys find that blue car experts couch?
Okay, well, again, talking about our fans, we certainly didn't start out with that piece, and it was a fellow who, I guess, credits on the show, but he went to Len, to Mr. Used, with a photo. I mean, keep in tabs. We didn't have Apple phones in either, right?
Right.
So he took a picture of this piece that he had, and he was from Toronto, and he went into Hamilton and gave this picture to Len, and Len in turn gave it to me and said, this guy would really like to see it on the Red Green show. And I'm looking at it and we can't use it for Handyman Corner. Lord love us, right? And then it was like, oh my God, can you imagine if we use this for the experts? And so I contacted him, and again, he didn't charge me a cent.
Wow.
And he kept it I think originally he was looking to maybe sell it. I think his intention at the beginning might have been, well, do you want to buy it? And it was like, I have no place to store it, so no, thank you. And I thought that was the end of that. But he was all about, I'd like you to use it. And I think we had it, I'm going to say 3 seasons. And then finally he did get a buyer for it. And then, of course, we had to say thank you so much. It was sad to see it go. But so we paid nothing for that, and he got it to us, and he moved it and everything.
Well, maybe it helped him sell it by having it on the show. Maybe it became a bit of a... Right?
Yeah, well, because we also did a photo shoot with Red laying on it.
Right, that didn't hurt.
And, so I'm sure, maybe he should have shared those profits with us. No. Hey, that's an idea,
We'll call it even.
Still around.
Okay, and another item I get asked about is the barrel chairs for the word game, where the guys are sitting around that table doing the word game. They're sitting, it looks like barrels that have been converted into chairs or something.
Yes, and it was.
Okay.
And it was a men's group that actually made it and created it, that wanted to sell it. And again, going back to Len, I said, Len, maybe this is something that you might be of interest. It's pretty darn unique. Well, he had a look at it. I honestly don't know to this day if he actually, well, he obviously did buy it. I have no idea for what price. And he said, is this something that's of interest to you? And I said, oh, I would love to have that. It's unique. He never sold it for all the seasons. For all the seasons, he never sold it.
So that we could keep using it, basically.
So that we could use it. And he stored it. And he stored it, yes.
Wow.
Because we didn't have a warehouse at the time to store, right?
Right.
So, yes. And so he stored it for us and held on to it for all of those years.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, I know.
All right, another question I get is sometimes the animal control guy, not Garth. Garth never had a live animal, I don't think. But I guess maybe sometimes Edfred did. I mean, most of the time these were just like puppets and stuff, right?
Yes.
But every once in a while there might be an actual animal, apparently, maybe. And someone asked about there's like a bunny in one of the episodes, even particularly. But where did we get animals for the show?
Well, actually, there are people, and that's their business. They're animal wranglers. And I got a couple of those names and then struck up a great friendship, a lovely lady who she had employed, I'm going to say maybe 6 employees, and they each had, they could be anything from rats and mice to birds to dogs to, whatever you needed, but it would be different categories and people involved. So her name was Loretta at the time. I don't know if she's still in business, but she was an animal wrangler. And my favorite thing was when we worked with Jerry Schaefer, who was the animal control guy. I really do think, even the bunny, he was really nervous of everything. He was nervous of everything.
That wasn't acting?
And, well, we did a thing, too, on a piranha fish. And obviously it wasn't a piranha that we wanted him to put a hand in a fish tank, but your dad had to show Jerry that it was just a black fish, that it wasn't a piranha, and he did it first. So, when you think about the bunny, I have to giggle out loud because, he was he couldn't have been more perfect. So when he acted like he was scared to death, I think he really was.
Okay, yeah. That's some people ask, how did you get such good performances out of these guys? And my dad was like, I wrote characters based on what I thought the people were kind of like in a way, and so they didn't have to act too much, right?
Absolutely. Like for Jerry, I don't think it was acting. I mean, that was pure. That wasn't bottled sweat that was coming out of his body. That was definitely, he was perspiring, and we were having to call in makeup and touch him up a bit and everything because he just was not an animal person. Okay. No, he was not. So it was perfect.
It's perfect, yeah. Okay. Now, way back in the second season, when the show, it kind of had that expanded cast in the second season, a bunch of people who came in for the second season and then sort of, we never heard from many of them again.
Right.
One of those guys who was kind of the precursor to the Dalton character, like the kind of cheap store owner kind of guy, was a character. Yeah, that's right. It was a character named Murray, I think, right? So in second season, there were some location shoots kind of like in Murray's store. And he had like a sidekick guy like Dwayne or something, or someone, maybe that was his name. And he was kind of worked at the store with him.
Yeah.
And then anyway, so yeah, I couldn't remember all the names, but we had a fan ask, was that an actual store? Where was that store? And does that store still exist?
Well, again, putting my best foot forward, all people can do is say no. So I would go out and, scout locations and make sure that it's what I want before I would approach people. And it was a Home Hardware that was in a plaza. Mm-hmm. And it has since been closed down because they moved to expand.
Okay.
But it was a Home Hardware in a plaza.
Okay.
And it was one of those Home Hardwares that had 10,000 items in it hanging everywhere.
Yep. So it looked perfect.
And then, of course, they had this wonderful little back room to walk through to give you depth because it was just a tiny little store, but 10,000 items in it. And they were all like, oh, my God, television, and isn't this great, and red, green, and so it was a Home Hardware store.
Okay, very cool. Discontinued home hardware. That seems perfectly fitting.
Yeah.
And what about and then Dalton, of course, had Dalton's Everything store in later seasons. So some people have been asking me where that was.
That was at Mr. Used.
It was. Okay. For some reason, I thought it was Green Gables. So maybe I've been telling people the wrong thing.
Yeah, no, we tried Green Gables. We actually went there and had a look at it and everything. But the problem was that it was more antique only, where Mr. Used, we had more space and we could put more junk in as we needed it,
I see.
So,
more clutter.
More clutter. Yeah. Yes, it was perfect.
Okay. Now this one is very specific, and I didn't even have any guess on this one. So one of our viewers wrote in saying, listen, in season 6, in the main lodge set, you can often see it during the word games. And I called up a word game from season 6, and you can see it. There's this pinball kind of looking machine behind the table. It's red and green, and there's kind of lights on it. It looks like a 1970s or something, or earlier even, pinball machine. So a fan asked, what is that? Is it a pinball machine? Do you recall even maybe what specific it was? And where did you find that thing?
Okay, there used to be a place in Hamilton called the Sportsman's Center, and it was like a bowling alley.
Okay.
And they had a lot of these pinballs and whatever. And lo and behold, if they didn't have one and it was on it, red-green, what are the chances?
What are the chances,
and
right?
And then the lights actually, when you plugged it in, the lights actually were red and green. So it was like, oh my God.
Gold mine.
Pretty incredible. So again, it was something that was given to the set. And in turn, it went at the end of our 15th season. Because of all the work that Len Waring had done at Mr. Used, I offered him the entire set. If there were things on it from other places, obviously it got returned, but he got the whole set and all that kind of stuff, and he set Possum Lodge up in his warehouse for visitors to go to.
Right.
So, and that stayed there with him for a long time, and I think they had an auction of the red-green items when Len was closing up, and that went for a huge amount of money. So,
that's cool.
Well, because it was red-green, like what are the chances, right?
Right.
And it was probably made, like, good Lord, probably early 1900s sometime, right? So, but it still worked. It was pretty remarkable.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. And then a lot of people just ask about cars. We touched on Terry's Garage a little bit, but kind of where did most of the cars come from that we see on the show?
Okay, well, there were a few given to us by people,
Right.
but the majority of them came from Terry's Garage was the name of the dad of Chris Campanola. Chris Campanola became our guru for all of the cars. So
Right.
we would bring him in when it would be handyman corners or whatever we needed, and just give him the specifics of this is what it's got to do. And I mean, he certainly wasn't into understanding or knowing what a script is all about. He did by the end of it. He could read a storyboard and everything, but it was that verbal, this is what it's got to do, this is, and he would come up with stuff and he would come with the cars. And then he got right into it that for some things, he would take it to the next step. Like, well, if you want it to do this, I can make it do that. And so then it got bigger and better.
Right.
And he would just, yes. And he actually, still in the business, he's moved on now and he provides cars for movie shoots.
Really?
In the area.
Oh, that's cool.
So, yeah, so he was with us for a long time, but he grew with it. I mean, he was a mechanic, and then it was like, well, yeah, I think I can get that for you. And, you want to put tire spikes onto the tires. Well, we can try this, So, and he got a big chuckle, and for him, it was like all of us, how can we make this work? And then he would, if he was having a problem, he would be in touch, but again, not likely. He would figure it out. It would be great.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. And people ask about Winston's septic truck. It looks like we've put a sign on it.
We did.
Over top of actual information.
Yeah.
So was that like a functioning, working truck?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
And
okay.
It was, again, one of those things of, here comes this new character, and this is what we need. And so, as you're driving down the road or you're out in the country, and I happened on a place way, way, way out on Mud Street, I'd say probably closer to Grimsby area. And there was this business with these old trucks. And, of course, you can imagine me pulling up and saying, hey, we would really like to use your truck, And I'd hate to say, but I think the first time it came on location, it hadn't been empty.
Oh.
So, no, and, I mean, if I put all the people together in a room that I worked with over the course of years, they'd be very colorful people. But this was a lovely man that finally caught on. Like, so this is what you're doing, okay? So, yeah, so it came from a real true company, and we had magnetic signs made that went over it. So,
I see. And it was a rental then?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, cool. As it seems like most of the stuff were rentals. You'd rent them because we couldn't store them, essentially. Does that sound right? Okay. Yeah. And Dougie Franklin had the monster truck. You talked a little bit about getting business cards from people back in the day, and then all of a sudden we need it. Now, I think there ended up being maybe 2 monster trucks. There was kind of a smaller one earlier, and then maybe one season there was a slightly bigger one. I'm not exactly sure about that.
Yeah.
But just curious
Dougie
about
Franklin, the Meals on Wheels, which was just so funny.
Yeah.
He was a very funny man. Yeah, so it was through, these monster truck shows that I had collected. But then, of course, as soon as in this particular case, you're talking, entertainment, their entertainment. So they were looking for big bucks. And I'm thinking, we got to find this somewhere. And then there was, again, one of Chad's, my son's friends, his father was into stock car racing. So lo and behold, I met him at school one day, dropping off his kid, and so I just, hey, so I really need to find. And so he said, when do you need it by? What do you want?
Oh,
blah,
my
blah,
gosh.
blah. So he set me up with a coffee meeting with this gentleman who owned the big blue truck, and so we paid him not a whole lot, maybe $100 a day for the rental of it.
Wow.
And that became Dougie's whatever. So I mean, you just never know. A lot of doors opened,
That's amazing.
Yeah, and that was fun. And oh my gosh, when it really did start up, it was like you really did need headsets.
That was loud, yeah. Okay, and then Buzz Sherwood, played by Peter Wildman, our crazy, hippie, insane airline pilot. He had a plane. I think maybe one season he had a blue plane, maybe another season he had a yellow plane. I don't remember. I feel like, and you would know this better than me, Sandy, feel like one of the years we taped with him, or maybe a couple of them, it was at that cottage that my parents had rented. And that we shot stuff at the dock with him. But I feel like another season, it was maybe his family cottage or some connection of his or a different cottage.
No, what it was we found this great location. They made lunches. It was a little restaurant, and it was, they could go and gas up their boats.
Oh, okay.
Like a little marina kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we shot there.
Okay.
And that was the fun part. And the guy that was like one of our characters.
Oh, is this Mike?
On a marina. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was so excited about having Buzz there and recognized him from other shows and all this kind of stuff that his barbecue caught on fire while he was talking to us. And, so like it was a very funny thing. People talk about accidents happening on the screen. It was like we would distract other people that they would have accidents,
Yeah.
But his barbecue caught on fire because he was so taken with this plane coming into his dock and Buzz being there looking like a hippie.
Yeah.
So,
I think
we did have to change because we couldn't always get the same one.
Right.
So that kind of worked into the character because the guy was so flighty, like he wouldn't ever just have one.
Right. And you wouldn't even recognize it's a different one or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I was there on that day with Mike barbecuing. I remember the paint peeling on the boathouse next to the barbecue because the flames were so high off it. While he's telling us stories and asking us questions, we're just like, oh man, we're all gonna die. It was great.
I know. Yeah, just unbelievable. And Dave, that just brings another story to mind that I have to share because it's so funny. So we were at the same arena with Buzz, and this gentleman, we went upstairs to eat our lunch, and there's only a few of us, but we all go upstairs, and this man comes over and he starts talking to us, each one of us thinking that it's the other person that knows this man, and he's offering to take us for a ride on a real true cigar boat. And, the mahogany boats that are like 2 blocks long.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody is like, oh, wow, this is so decadent. Like, yeah, like we would love to do that. Meanwhile, your dad's thinking, I know this guy, and I'm thinking that your dad knows him, or maybe Peter knows him, or somebody. So we all get out there, and he takes off. We all are in this thing with, like, no life jackets or anything. Like, the nose is up to the sky, and I teased about, I think I had my first facelift. We went so fast, and he took us out for a spin and came back, and we thanked him and everything, and your dad said to me, like, who is that guy? I said, well, I don't know. Who is he? Do you know? Like, we could have been gone to who knows where. We could never have come back, But that was just thinking, and he was a fan of the show. He recognized us, and we each thought that, oh, okay.
Yeah, no problem.
Anyways, that's how it works. But I never did ever see him again, and we never needed a cigar boat. Darn.
Oh, my goodness. That's awesome.
I know.
Now I actually have one other question for you. I didn't write it down. This is just one I thought of. So I'm just throwing one at you here.
Okay.
See how we do. In the very first season, when we did Ranger Gourd stuff, it was in it looked like a family treehouse, like in somebody's backyard. It wasn't the tower yet. It wasn't the CBC set thing. This was low, like some kid's treehouse. It looked like. And when we watched season 1, people say to me, where was that treehouse? And I don't know. They're like, was that from your house? I'm like, no, that's not ours. So do you remember?
Oh no, I remember because it's a very funny story. So your dad had written the character of Ranger Gourd. I laugh at this. Like, it's like, oh, honestly, David, sleepless nights, right? So anyways, we've got to find a treehouse. We've got to find a treehouse that's going to accommodate 2 adults. And we can also get a film crew. And we can,
camera up there. And yeah.
So we were shooting at Camp Rebuff, which is out Lowville way.
Yes.
And coming back home, all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, there's a tree house in a tree, and it's got a roof. And so I do the Yui, and I get on the other side of the road, and so I go up and knock on the door. And this man answered the door, and of course I got to put my best foot forward as to who I am, what I've seen, and what I need. And boy, that treehouse sure looks pretty good, right? And so it was a man had built it for his children. And the funny thing is that when we would go, I never went up in it, Lord. But when the two, when Peter and your dad would go up, and Bob, who was our cameraman, would be on the ladder, this thing would sway. So if you look really closely at the Ranger Gourds, it's not made that well. there's a little movement to it that was not done by the camera. And, every time, when we use it, it was like, oh, this is going to be the last time for sure that we're going to be able to do this, right?
My goodness.
So it was pretty funny. But that's where it was. So it was on whatever that is, Highway 7 or something coming down from Lowville.
Oh, my goodness. That's hilarious. Yeah. That's great.
I know. But that it swayed. That was the best part. Not everybody totally into character, right? Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's great. Well, Sandi, I mean, thank goodness for your child psychology background and you're somehow working for the show, giving yourself permission to be charming and bold in asking for things. I don't think the show would have happened without those two things being real. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much, David. My pleasure. And, good luck with the program and everything. And, and to all the fans that watch this, like, you made Red Green what he is today. And for all of us, it was a joy. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Sandi. Okay. I really appreciate your time.
Okay. Talk to you soon.
Okay. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.